Okay, Darci's Corner, part 3 maybe. And this is, we're still February 2021. Oh, I get inspired in the evening, particularly when I'm doing my different jobs and routines, because I have lots of time to think about these things. I should write them down, like do a book or something, but it's difficult for me to stay focused on that for long periods of time. So I'm recording this, and maybe later I'll put it into a different format. And again, I may or may not share this one, and if I do share this one, there's 2 previous recordings. But if I just share the 3rd one, that could happen too, and I might leave the other 2 in the archive if I even keep them. I do find that expressing these things out loud helps me to sort through the many different emotions and where I want to go and how I got there. I mean, we're in a pandemic right now, so I don't currently have friends that I can express these things to. And most of my friends are Mormons, they're devout, but many of them would probably indulge me and allow me to, ramble at them. Even though I know that there are many religious people who are very much against the trans community, at least the ones in my area have been very friendly to me, even after I showed up at church in a dress, which is a big no-no, by the way. If you're an LDS member, and if you are, that this is not an acceptable way to process one's life. Everything's supposed to be prayer and straight, cis, heterosexual, and anything that isn't is just, inherently evil. But at least my community is very accepting and understanding that the world doesn't really work that way. But that's another ramble. Anyway, but it's a pandemic, so I got myself, and I've got my camera, and maybe I got a few people on YouTube who will call me liars. I had one person call me a liar. They're like, "No, that didn't happen to you." I'm like, well, I was relating my experience with my personal physician, so it was me and them there, so you weren't there. I know I'm not lying. Your problems are going to have to be yours. Sorry. Anyway, back to my parents. They weren't bad people. They aren't bad people. They're still both alive. I love them both. I'm not really in steady contact with either one of them, though, because they're at different stages in trying to accept this. My parents both split a long time ago, and that's neither here nor there, other than to say that they're not in the same household. And so I have a different relationship with my mother than I do with my father. And since I've come out, I don't have a relationship with my father, which is very sometimes disheartening. But people are at where they're at. But growing up as a child in the 80s and 90s, gay was a slur, and it was swearing, and you weren't allowed to express that in my house. But that is not to say that my parents didn't love me or that they didn't treat me with kindness. My dad took me fishing. My mom, kissed my booze and tried to help me deal with my bullying situation. Neither one of them was able to help me deal with that, but they both tried. Hold on a second. I've decided to take a lunch break, and my rabbit was very much in favor of baby spinach, which I buy for me, but my rabbit, which is hard to get focused in the frame here. This camera, it does turn around, but once it's recording, it only records in the one direction. Anyway, I'm going to do that for the next 5 or 10 minutes, so I'm not going to record that. Well, that was exciting. I was in the middle of a a thought, recording a program, and then suddenly I had to use the washroom. I thought, well, let's pause for a second, go real quick and come back. And then I got up, and in case you hadn't noticed, I have a pet rabbit who, she likes to have the same food I like to have. And that's fine. I don't mind sharing. But I also have 2 dogs who do mind sharing. It upsets them greatly when the rabbit gets treats. They also got the treats. It just upset them greatly that the rabbit was getting the treats. I never thought I'd be Dr. Dolittle, but here I am. Anyway. Yeah, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and my parents were good people, but they did teach me that being gay was wrong. And they also, took me on trips and looked after me and loved me, but they taught me that being gay was wrong. And it took a long time for society to catch up to the fact that gay isn't wrong. That's part of what I want to put in my book and the study, I'm not sure what I'm going to put together, but it is a different world that we're in today. I remember when Ellen DeGeneres first came out, and I'm glad she did. But when she did that, she lost her show, she lost her career, she lost everything. And then a few years later, quite a few years later, Rosie O'Donnell had a talk show, and then she came out, and shortly after that, she lost her show. If you listen to her talk about it, she'll say that she was offered the show for longer, and she just wanted different things in life, so that was why she chose to end the show, which is wonderful. I'm glad she made the choices that were right for her, but for me at the time watching that, I'm watching another gay person get their show canceled. And another really important pivotal moment, I had moved back home at that point. I was trying to rebuild my life again, and my mother really expressed her homophobia when Rosie O'Donnell came out, because then she couldn't look at Rosie anymore, and she hated her. And up until that point in time, she loved Rosie O'Donnell and was buying her magazine and thought she was just the greatest thing ever. But then Rosie O'Donnell came out as gay, and Mom couldn't stand her. And even though I was in my 20s, that still affected me. I'm like, I can't tell anybody that I'm part of the rainbow community. And also, to be fair, I was dating the girlfriend who became my wife, and she probably would have been a little upset if she found out I was, quote unquote, a little gay. When you're trans, and especially when you're a child and when you're younger, at least in today's world it's different, right? In today's world, the information is so much better, and when you're 8 or 9 or 10, like, you're on the internet and you know how to read, and you can do these things. That was not the case back at that time. So I didn't know I was trans. I didn't understand what this meant. I honestly thought I was a little gay sometimes. Because what else are you going to think? I'm like, sometimes I think about being a woman. Sometimes I think about engaging these different sexual acts as a woman. Well, the only reason you think about doing it as a woman, if you were born a male, is because you're trans. Okay, it's not because you're kinky. I mean, you might be kinky, but you're also trans. But I didn't know what that was. And I was trying to be, quote unquote, a good Christian at the time. So I was trying to curtail those desires and those urges, because you're not supposed to do that stuff if you're being a good Christian. I wasn't sure how good of a Christian I wanted to be, but I was trying to be one, a good one. By the way, I wasn't raised in the LDS faith. I was just raised to be a generic Christian. You believe in Christ, Christmas is great, and you're saved, and life is good. That was kind of what I was raised to believe as a youth and a child. But my parents were actually very, very upset when I became part of the LDS church. And now that I'm openly trans, they really wish I'd just go back to the LDS thing, because that was a easier thing for them to tolerate around me. Anyway, there's a lesson in this, and this is valuable to other people. If I were to take my story and the insights I've gained, and I don't know if I could need to put it in a book or a program or what I need to do with this information, but I need to do something with it. Something is telling me, probably the spirit, that I need to do something with this information, and it will help other people, and it will help me too, because I think this is an important story. I know other people also have trans stories and coming out stories and how they evolved into the person that they are, and all these stories are so helpful when they're collected together, right? I know this one's running a little bit longer, but it's gonna have to, I guess. I don't want to do a fourth one, although I might. I just watched the philosophy tube girl. She just, came out as trans because all of her previous philosophy tubes, she's a man, and then all of a sudden she's a woman. And she's like, oh, by the way, for the last year I've been a woman, and just coming in and putting on the man costume. That's awesome. I'm glad she can be a chameleon. I don't have that ability yet, and maybe I never will. I don't know. But it's amazing that she does. All these stories coming together, it's just part of the community. It's part of the better world that we're building for ourselves and for our children. And I'm glad we're making this world better. I'm glad that I can be me in my small conservative town, and I don't have to really worry about hate. Nobody's coming after me. Nobody's threatening me. Nobody thinks I'm after their children. It's a much better world. I wish that I had grown up in this world. I wish that I was 12 now going through this. Then I would transition and nobody would know outside of my elementary school and high school. Like, nobody would know. Which is the world we want. Where you can just grow up and be you, and you will love who you are, and other people will see you as who you are. And there's still anxiety in life. Nothing's ever perfect. I have no doubt that trans boys are very upset they're missing certain equipment, and trans girls are probably just upset they have certain equipment. This is not an easy process for any of us, but it's much easier to go through when you're in your youth than when you're in your 30s, 40s, or 50s. The only reason so many of us are coming out now is because now it's socially acceptable. And whereas before it wasn't. And it is a better world. It's too bad it's not a better world for everybody. We're working on it. And know that if you're in a situation where you can't express yourself, many of us know how that feels, and we care, and if we can help you, we will. Anyway, that's it for Darcy's Corner this time. This is a long one, but I think I probably will post this one. Peace. Sorry. Peace.